Good morning, everybody. Thank you for coming. Very excited by the turnout we got. A couple of years ago, the CAS put on a seminar at Sony Studios. The title of that seminar was Workflow, and I think a lot of you people were there. But I wonder if anybody remembers a comment made by one of the presenters. It was Michael Cioni from Light Iron Digital, and he said, if you look back in recent history, you'll see that any time IP-based architecture has been deployed in an industry that was previously using analog or other technologies, that it quickly takes that industry over. And it does so, and it's irrevocable. It takes it over, and it does so very fast. And I thought that was a very kind of prescient comment, because at the time I'd been starting to think, you know, why are we still using some of the technologies that we're using? You know, I've been getting a lot of requests from people who, mixers who are being asked to send multi-channel streams of AES over long distances, and there just really wasn't a good economical way to do it. But you know, the answer to my own question was that the equipment we need to do that didn't really exist. So a couple years later, I'd heard about Dante. And I didn't know too much about it. I knew it was a protocol for streaming audio over IP, over Cat5 cables, but it seemed like it was a technology for other people, for installed sound, for live sound. We're not going to be seeing that in our little business. But and then, surprise, Sound Devices came out with the Pix 260. Ostensibly, of course, it's a video recorder. It records Apple ProRes, DNX HD. But they were also nice enough to put in a little mode for us, an audio-only mode. And they also had a Dante port on it. So at the same time, all of a sudden, there's a Dante card for the Yamaha. And so now we started to see enough gear coming together that you could conceivably deploy it. And at the same time, I started getting calls from a lot of mixers who were curious about this, about whether they could use it or not. So we decided to have this little event to talk about what Dante can do and how you might conceivably use it. You're going to hear a lot of numbers, you know, very high track counts, lots of channels over Cat5, but it's really not about track count. It's about how your equipment might connect with other equipment, and how you might connect with the people around you on the set. Because once you build a network-based structure, it opens up other possibilities for sharing and collaboration that we just can't really do with existing technology today. So I'll try not to get all, you know, popular science. You know, we're not going to be driving flying cars tomorrow, and you know, it's an interconnect system. It's not going to make what you're doing now obsolete, but it's a tool you might want to use. And I've always found that sound mixers in general are very MacGyver-y kind of people. You know, you want something done on a set, or someone who's going to, you know, do that MacGyver for you. It's always the sound guy, because you look at your sound cards and you'll always find equipment that's not really made for us, that we've just co-opted it. But I've been telling a lot of the other vendors that if you put a 12-volt port on something, it's going to go on a cart. I don't care what it is. It's a coffee maker, whatever. We're going to find a way to use it. Coffee maker. It's almost like a sport, you know. So we're going to do a little thing here. We're going to show you how Dante interconnects with other equipment. So first up, I'm going to introduce Landon Gentry, who is the manager of global support for Audinate, and he's flown down here from Oregon to be with us today. So he's going to give you a demonstration about what is Dante, what it can do, and then we're going to hook stuff up, and we're going to show you how it interconnects and show you how the routing works. It's pretty simple. So their motto is Dante, it just works, and it does. It does. So let me introduce Landon, and I'm going to switch over.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here. First time doing this, so bear with me. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about Dante and some background on Audinate, the company that it manufactures and provides Dante to the OEM manufacturers for the equipment that you may be using. Our vision is to revolutionize AV systems to enable our customers to thrive in a networked world. Our initial goal was to provide something similar to a network interface card for audio equipment. That's evolved into a more feature-rich solution for delivering audio across standard networks. A little bit of background. We are headquartered in Sydney, Australia, but we have offices worldwide. Initial R&D began at the National Information Communications and Technology Australia. It's a government-funded research institute in Australia. We then formed in 2006 as an actual corporation in Australia. We consider ourselves the leading developer of media networking technology, and we believe that we've pioneered the standards-based high-quality audio over standard IP networks. Also, our patented Dante technology is a complete plug-and-play solution that goes from end to end in the transport of media. It's almost easier to start with what Dante is not, and Dante is not a transport, it's not a protocol, and it's not a specific format. What it is a complete AV solution. It's proven and scalable, it's built on open standards, and it works with existing network infrastructure or most off-the-shelf networking equipment. We also consider it a no-compromise solution. So it's a complete high-performance digital media networking toolkit. It is plug-and-play, simple service discovery and label-based routing. If you have a home network at your house, you know everything you need to know in order to get a Dante network running. We have widespread adoption, and because of that, the highest interoperability. There are several hundred Dante products available or under active development, and that number is growing daily. We do have a patented glitch-free redundancy, which saw its first use in live sound and concert touring, and we provide full PC and Mac integration. I'll show you a little video with a little bit of background on Audinate.
Network convergence of AV and IT networks are merging as equipment transitions from analog connected systems to digital. Audinate is revolutionizing the way AV networks are connected by creating the award-winning solution, Dante. Life before Dante was complicated. If you wanted a large network, with CobraNet, you had to accept high latency with slow network speeds. If you wanted low latency, you could get it with EtherSound, but with limited network topology. Networks were time-consuming to install and complex to configure, so forget about ease of use. And most networking technologies had hairy incompatibilities with switches. Tired of compromising? You no longer have to with Dante. Dante integrates media and control for your entire AV system over one single IP network. Dante delivers low latency, high performance, tight synchronization with sub-millisecond latency. Dante devices automatically discover each other with one-click signal routing using simple names, no complex programming. It doesn't get any easier than that. With Dante, the hairy switch is gone. Dante operates on a wide variety of standard switches. So IT managers can continue to use their preferred switch suppliers like Cisco, HP, Juniper Networks, and their preferred network management tools. Dante is a scalable, feature-rich AV networking system. Never compromise. Dante is digital media networking perfected.
So we also are considered the new market leader. We have one of the most interoperable networking solutions today because of the widespread adoption. We've got over 90 manufacturers that have adopted Dante. About 60% of those have been announced, and that includes most of the major console vendors and several microphone vendors. Avenue, which is the AVB Industry Alliance Pro Audio members, About 60% of those are Dante licensees, and we are providing them a migration path to AVB with a firmware upgrade. A recent industry poll has also shown that Dante is specified 2-to-1 over any other alternate networking in installed and live sound. This is an ad that we ran at Infocom 2 weeks ago. Kid in a candy store. I've been told that it only really works in the US. We're building on proven IT standards with the Dante technology. All of these are standards that have been in existence in the IT industry for many years. IEEE 1588 is how we achieve our clock synchronization, and this has been used widely in industrial manufacturing facilities for synchronizing robotic manufacturing processes. DHCP is something you've probably heard of. This is why when you get a home gateway and you plug in your computer, you're able to talk to other computers in your home network. QoS allows you to prioritize traffic, make sure that what's important gets to the destination first. DNS, multicast DNS and service discovery. These are terms that are actually wrapped in a trademark term from Apple called Bonjour, and it's built into Macintoshes. Zero configuration networking is a standard buzzword. It was developed by Microsoft, and in combination with Bonjour is part of developing a network that when you just put computers together, they talk instead of having to configure anything. This is a quote that we got in one of our, actually it was a service ticket that I dealt with. It wasn't related to Dante, it was actually related to something else, but I think that describes most people's first experience with Dante. So some of the features that the Dante technology provides is sample accurate timing. We guarantee ±1 microsecond playout, capture time alignment, and that can be maintained across several switch hops. So you can go long distances and still guarantee your playout at ±1 microsecond. Depending on the product, we can also support multiple sample rates. We also support pull-up and pull-down for video frame synchronization. We also support different sample rates at the same time on the single network. So you can run different sample rates between endpoints without having to separate those networks. Each one of the endpoints provides high-quality, low-jitter audio clocks. Another major feature is ultra-low latency. Latency can be as low as 150 microseconds. That's for point-to-point links and single gigabit switch. The typical default playout latency is 1 millisecond, and that can include most 1 gigabit networks with several switch hops, so larger installations. And this is not limited to the highest latency device. You can have multiple different latencies between endpoints on the same network. And latency is 100% deterministic. You pick the playout latency that you want for that endpoint, and it will always have that latency. We support standard switches or AVB switches, and this is important. If you're building a cart, you can go down to Fry's and pick up an inexpensive piece of hardware. If you're integrating with network infrastructure in a facility, you can work with whatever that IT department for the facility has picked. 80% of AV installations are upgrades, so this is very important to the installed audio market. And customers can then choose their own switch. We're not locking you down on a single vendor. And when AVB switches become available, we work on AVB switches as well.
The adoption of Dante is moving at an incredible pace. In barely a few years, over 90 OEM manufacturers have chosen Dante. Dante's customers are the who's who of AV companies. Dante is the most interoperable solution available. Why is the AV industry turning to Dante? No compromises. It's a proven, high-performance, complete solution, and it just works. Dante has toured worldwide with the biggest names in the music industry. Live sound reinforcement systems require sub-millisecond latency. Dante just works. Installed systems like boardrooms, hotels, casinos, shopping centres, performing arts centres and houses of worship require a scalable network topology using standard IT networks. Dante just works. Broadcast and post-production facilities have long ago adopted IP networking. Dante is built on open standards, enabling it to leverage the advancements in the IP world. Dante just works. Need to record your event or performance? No problem. Dante Virtual Sound Card connects to your Mac or PC without any hardware. Dante just works. University campuses, hospitals, stadiums, airports, voice evacuation systems, public address systems and rail transportation centres all require redundancy and transmission of media across multiple subnets and facilities. Dante just works. Dante is the only networking technology that fully meets the requirements across all of these diverse markets and use cases. No need to compromise. Dante is digital media networking perfected.
So we have the highest interoperability in the industry because of the adoption. You probably recognize a lot of these logos. A lot of these people are here with products being demonstrated or being used as part of this seminar. We have over 90 licensees and growing. I'm always surprised. It's almost daily that we add someone else as a licensee. So you can talk to more with Dante. We're in stadium applications. These are just a few. Fixed installations, casinos, universities, shopping malls. We've been used in live-to-air broadcast. We kind of cheated with the WWE. That's a video game. We were used at the Queen's Jubilee. This particular setup was actually pretty exciting because it was a 1 kilometer long road with an audience staged along the entire distance. Live sound. Kenny Chesney tours with Dante. I think Barbra Streisand was one of the first adopters for her tours. So Dante is a no-compromise solution. It's a complete high-performance digital media networking toolkit, provide true plug-and-play. It has widespread adoption, and that's growing every day. We support existing switches or AVB switches, and we consider ourselves a complete end-to-end solution. I got one more video, and hopefully.
Standards provide building blocks. Audinate's networking architects designed Dante's foundations using IP standards to integrate seamlessly in an IT network. Since Dante is built on IP standards, it can take advantage of new standards like AVB. Just add another brick to the wall. A real-world AV system is much more than building blocks or standards. You need solutions that integrate PCs and Macs into the AV network, support for different sample rates, unicast and multicast transmission, and redundant links, and of course network monitoring. With auto-discovery and one-click signal routing using simple names, Dante saves installation time and saves money. Dante can take you to new heights by delivering a complete AV network with outstanding performance, superior flexibility, and unprecedented usability. The future is always uncertain for new standards. Only Dante offers the triple play of AV networking, supporting audio over IP, as well as both flavors of AVB, 1722 Layer 2 and AVB RTP Layer 3. No problem with Dante. Existing switches or AVB switches? No problem with Dante. If you need to connect AV systems across several LANs over an IP router, you can do this with Dante NetSpander. No problem with Dante. Dante de-risks your future by offering solutions for today's and tomorrow's networks. Your investment is protected with Dante, because Dante is digital media networking perfected.
Well, thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you, Landon. So now we're gonna hook some things up, and I'm gonna start with the simplest setup I can, and that's just the Yamaha 01V and the PIX 260, and without using all of the other interconnect stuff that I'm going to show you later. So what I've got coming out of the Yamaha is this little red cable. Okay, that cost me $1.95 at Fry's. And with that, I have 16 channels in and 16 channels out. If we used analog cabling or digital or AES, I probably would have charged you $100 to make that cable, just because it's a pain to solder those DB25s, and I hate DB25. So, but with a Cat5 crimper and some cheap, Cat5 cable, I can make a cable in about 10 minutes. I'm getting better at it, but I bought a better crimper, so now I crimp with impunity. So just in that, it's a good cost saving in just materials. So let me switch over to this. Let's see, which one is me? So we're going to start with the Yamaha. Okay, the Yamaha 01V, and in particular, this is a Yamaha 01V 96i. It's the latest version. It's become a very popular mixer in production sound. I know several people here use it. Scott Harbour, by the way, who was kind enough to bring his cart over here, is also running. Is it a 96i as well? It's a 96i. If you're running a digital cart on a production sound console, it's probably an 01V. So the back of the 01V, the 01V itself has 12 mic inputs and a total of 16, including the extra line inputs. But it uses their slot card architecture. So you see on the back of the 01V, there is a slot card on the right. So I have the, this is the MY16 AUD slot card by Audinate. So you'll see it has 2 of the RJ45 ports and a serial port. And a few lights. This would be a DM1000. So the Yamaha 01V architecture only has 1 slot, and each card will give you 16 channels in, 16 channels out. If you have a bigger Yamaha console, this is a DM1000, I believe, so they have multiple slots. Then you can run more channels. You can have 2 cards in there running to the same PIX 260, so then you have the 32-track capability. Other consoles from Yamaha are having Dante built into them. So this is the back of a CL5. If you notice kind of to the bottom to the left, there's 2 Dante ports built into the console. And it still has 3 slots built into it. So, and I think John Pearson, who's here from Yamaha, also has an LS9. That has Dante built in. Is it a slot? It's a slot card. Okay. One of the things the LS9 can do that the 01V can't do is head amp control. Yamaha makes external preamps that can be controlled remotely from a lot of their consoles. This is the Rio 16. I believe he has the 32-channel version over there. They also have a whole series of amplifiers with Dante built into them. So you could conceivably have everything on a network, mixer, amplifiers, all the way speakers running on Dante. So the MY16 AUD card has Dante ports, a primary and a secondary. And you'll see that on just about any Dante-enabled device. And that allows you to run redundant networks. So in this example here, when I'm running off the back of the Yamaha into the PICs, I'm using a single cable, and it's set up in switched mode, where each one of these RJ45 basically acts like a gigabit switch. But I can put this into redundancy mode in the PICs. And in that case, I can run 2 cables, so that's an extra $1.95 at Fry's. And if something happens to one of those cables, the other one is running audio. And there's no pops, there's no breakups, you'll never even know what happened. So that's what redundancy mode does. The card in the Yamaha, the MY16 AUD, is fixed in redundancy mode. So it's built that way. So you cannot use it in switched mode, which I'll talk about in a little bit. You'll also see a serial port on the back, and that is for running head amp control. Some of the mixers with Dante built into it, you can remote control the mic preamps from the console, and that control information is sent over the Dante network along with the audio. Because the Dante connectivity, it supports not only just audio transfer, but there's also control information that can be sent down that line. So on some consoles that don't have it built into the Dante stream, if you have, not on the O1V, but I think the DM1000, it has a serial port on the back, so you can loop out of the serial port into the card, and then it's transmitted down the line to the preamp. And now to the PIX260. Also in my rack here. Now the PIX260 ostensibly is a video recorder. Like I said, it records Apple ProRes and DNX HD up to 10-bit, 444 for Apple ProRes, 12-bit, sorry, 12. I could get it right. And it has a audio-only mode. So for this demonstration, we're going to leave it in audio mode because we don't care about video. It's really, who cares about video? So I have it in the PIX rack, which is an optional accessory, which allows me to rack mount it. It will hold 2 PIXs side by side. In my case, I have, and I don't have a picture of it, I'm sorry, you can look at it if you want, the PIX drive bay. Since the PIX260 will record to 4 drives, either simultaneously or cascaded from one drive to the next. So it has 2 internal drive bay slots in the PIX, and on the back of the PIX260 there's 2 eSATA P ports, which you can plug in external drives to. We had a customer, I don't know if Steve Bedeau is here today, recently shooting a show in Atlanta, running 2 PIX260s with external 2 gigabyte drives, and I think he said he was rolling about 24 hours a day for a month, and without any hiccups whatsoever. So, and we're recording to the SSDs loaded in the PIX Caddy. The PIX Caddy that I'm using in here uses standard SSD drives. When it's removed from the PIX, just like in the PIX240, the PIX Caddy itself has FireWire 800, USB 3, and eSATA connectivity itself. So it's its own standalone drive. You can pull it out, hook it into a computer, transfer your files. They also make a product called the PIX Dock, which is a Thunderbolt product. So you can plug that in a transfer station, and what's the transfer speed on that? Like 3 gigabytes a second? 3, yeah. So it's really fast. So here's a shot of the PIX in the rack. You see the one on the right has the display flipped down to expose the 2 internal drive bays, drive 1 and 2. So the PIX Caddies just slot right into there. They're hot swappable. They also, I believe you're showing, may I? Is it secret? Can I show it? This is the latest PIX Caddy is going to be called the CF Caddy. Thank you. I know. So for those of you who want to deliver your files on compact flash cards instead of just slotting drives out, this replicates the PIX Caddy functionality, plugs straight in, but it has a compact flash slot in the front. So it will record to compact flash instead of internal drives. But you can still have other PIX Caddies with SSDs. It'll record to all of them simultaneously. It'll do it in a cascade. And I think it even now, you can set it up where as you're recording to one drive, if you fill up that drive, it jumps to the next one, starts a new file, keeps recording. And you can even, will it automatically take the drive offline, the first one if you want? The drive you filled up will go offline and will instantly become available on the network for FTP file transfers. You could literally be recording to a drive while somebody's downloading your files that you just finished doing. That's for the advanced class. But the back of the PIX 260, it has a lot of I/O you're going to be familiar with. You know, it has XLR line ins and line outs. It has DB25s for more line in, AES on a 25 pin. I believe you use the Tascam pin out protocol. SDI inputs and outputs, timecode in, timecode out, sync inputs, GPI, USB, eSATA P, RS422. We're actually using the PIX 260 right now as the video gearbox for this entire presentation because we have all these disparate sources with the TriCaster for streaming, and so all video is flowing into the PIX, and the PIX is simultaneously outputting different SDI and HDMI feeds to everybody at the same time. It was the easiest way to do it. And then, of course, on the back, you're going to see in the bottom right-hand corner the primary and secondary Dante ports. So in routing audio from the Yamaha to the PIX, I know a lot of you are familiar with the Yamaha, but some of you aren't. But the MY16 card is just 16 channels of input and output. And whatever you want to send to those inputs or outputs is all done in the Yamaha. You know, you can assign mix buses, aux buses, direct outputs, whatever you want it to be, inserts. And once that hits the Dante card, it's then available on the Dante network to the PIX. Now, the PIX, unlike some equipment used in Dante, it has a graphic user interface. So we can do a lot of the routing and track naming and stuff that you typically would do in Dante Controller. We can do it right on the front screen. So you don't need to run anything else. So one piece of Cat5 and you're in business. So let me so this would be an example of the output patch in the Yamaha screen. In this example, you'll see on the top for the slot. So the O1V only has one slot. So in this example, and this is kind of the default, I have the output buses routed to the slots, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 through 16. I still have ADAT ports. I still have 4 Omni outputs, which are 1/4-inch physical outputs. And on the O1V96, I also have there's going to be a tab for the USB. So the USB is another 16 channels. I think Scott's running that. So you're running 16 Dante out into the PIX and then AES out of the PIX, either or. But you're also running the USB to your Mac for, say, like boom recorder, so it's a very flexible machine. Clocking on the O1V. So these are kind of the two main tabs that have to do with what I'm doing here today. Other than routing stuff to the outputs, we have the word clock tab. And when you slot in the MY16 Dante card into the Yamaha, you'll notice that it'll register and it'll think it's an ADAT card. Don't know why. I got a shrug from John. So it recognizes it thinks it's an ADAT card, but it still sees the 16 channels of I/O. And then you're going to see a bunch of boxes, and those are representing clock source. So on a Yamaha board, you know, if it's seeing a valid clock signal, that box will be empty. If it's not seeing anything at all, there's a big X going through it. If it's seeing something, but it's not really sure what it is, or if it's not a valid clock signal, you'll get like a half. It's just like bowling. You get a strike or a spare. So in this instance, we're telling the Yamaha to take its clock signal from the slot card And the slot card, in turn, is going to be on the Dante network as well. It could just as easily be on the internal clock. When I launch Dante Controller, we're going to talk about clocking and how to set the clock signals in that. So now I'm going to switch to camera. Hope this works. And of course, it's out of focus. There we go. Boop. So the audio tab on the Pix 260, we have 4 buttons. Audio, LCD, menu, files. Pretty simple. If I press the audio button, it brings up this screen, which is showing me all of my audio meters. I'm only showing 16 channels. You can go into the menu and you can say, just show me 8, or show me 16, or show me all 32. But in this case, we're just doing 16. Now, with the Pix 260 user interface, I can do all of the routing I need to do on the Dante network just with the 260. I don't need to run anything else. And that's achieved by simply moving the data knob up and down, picking the track, and then the fast forward and rewind buttons are left or right. So I want to route track 1. I just wrote there, I press enter, and it brings in all of my options. So you can route a line input, you can route audio over HDMI or AES, or embedded over the SDI stream, or the Dante. So you can pick any one of those inputs for any one of these tracks. You can mix and match. You can have a line here and a Dante there and an AES here. And when I hit Dante, it brings up and it sees the MYAUD 00345. And that's just the default name that Yamaha has given that MY card. On a Dante network, everything has to have a different name. If something has the same name, it can get confusing. So by default, they all have these big kind of alphanumeric names. But I can rename that later in controller. So I'm going to pick that as my source, and now I can pick a channel. So it automatically sees everything. So once the Cat 5, actually in this case I'm running Cat 6, once I run the cable from the O1V into the Pix, they instantly see each other. And that's part of the Dante connectivity. They see each other, they apply IP addresses to each other, and all channels are available then for routing. So you don't have to go in and program anything on the Dante network to do this. So I'm just going to go pick channel 1. And it's going to fix that in there. So then I can just move down to the next channel. I can pick Dante MY channel 2. Now I can change these names to be a little more representative of what I want to do. But that I really have to, as far as the Yamaha is concerned, I have to use Dante Controller to do that. I can also change track names by just hitting enter. I can type it in with a keyboard or use the rotary knob. I can arm a track simply by turning it on. I also have digital gain. I can make up gain. I have, how much gain do I have here? 20 dB more of gain. Or I can bring it down, plus or minus, down to 25 or to off. So if you need to match up signal sources, you can change gain here. I can dial in delay if I need to delay an input. That's in milliseconds. Up to 500 milliseconds. That's a lot of milliseconds. Nope. I'm moving. So I can do all of that here without anything else. But now we're going to go and show you what happens in Dante Controller. So hold on while I reclock here a little bit. So let me explain what I've got going on in this cart. In addition to the Yamaha O1V and the Pix 260, I also have a Shure SCM 820 auto mixer, a Shure ULX D4Q 4-channel wireless, I have a Focusrite RedNet 2, and I have a gigabit switch that I stole from our IT department a couple of days ago when they weren't looking. And everything is just plugged into the switch. Now, when you're plugging in Dante equipment, you can go from one piece of gear to the next one and then loop out of the secondary into the primary or the other. Depending on how much gear you've got, you don't necessarily need a gigabit switch. I just have one because we have a lot of stuff we're plugging in here. I've run a Cat 6 cable over to Scott. And on Scott's cart, he's got a little Netgear 5-channel gigabit switch. It cost me $34 on Amazon. I put a 4-pin Hiroshi on it just for power because I couldn't resist. So it runs off 12 volts. So there are 12-volt solutions out there for gigabit switches. And I'm also running another Cat 6 back to the audio control. During Landon's presentations, the videos, the audio you heard was routed through the Dante network all the way back to them. It was input into another Shure SCM820. All of this is Dante-enabled. So let me launch controller. Oh, I should talk a little bit about Cat 5 versus Cat 6 and cabling. I'm running everything on Cat 6, and I'm running everything on a gigabit switch. You can run it on 10-100 switches and Cat 5. It's ideally you'd want to keep it at gigabit. So I use gigabit switches in Cat 6, and I'm trying to keep everything that way. You can also, if you're right outside and you're running really long lengths, another option might be tactical fiber. The gigabit switch that I have also has fiber inputs, and tactical fiber is about the toughest thing out there. I mean, Landon was giving me an example of a shoot. I think it was in the UK where they had set up everything. They had run fiber from one place to another, and then while they were waiting out in the street, a street sweeper came by and lifted up the cart because it was looped over, and it pulled the cart up off the ground and dropped it. But the tactical still worked fine. So Cat 5 and Cat 6 are pretty durable. You can get more robust jacketed pairs. I'm not using any EtherCon connectors that Neutrik makes, but for just in a cart like this, it's a pretty simple interconnect, and it's a very price-effective way to do it. There are also switches that provide PoE, and PoE is called Power over Ethernet. Excuse me. There are devices out there that use PoE, and PoE is just like it sounds, where DC voltage is sent down the Ethernet line along with all the control and data information, so that the device on the other end does not have to be positioned right near a power source. You'll see like security cameras that way. So it's getting its power directly off the gigabit switch. And there are audio items that work on PoE. So I know there's some 2-channel ones out there that are little PoE boxes that with a Dante port that are 2 channels in, 2 channels out, that if you have a gigabit switch with PoE, you can throw that out. What's the maximum length? It's 100 meters or 300 meters? 100. 100 meters is 300 and change feet. So you can get pretty long distances with that. But let's launch controller. Let's see what comes up here. I'm going to sit down for a second. Yes, I'm running Windows. Sorry. So this is Dante controller. So I launched Dante controller. It's a free application available from Audinate. It's Mac or Windows. And it instantly sees everything on the network. So I can see and have access to my PIX260, Scott's PIX260, I can route audio back and forth. He can send his mix to me. If he's an additional mixer on a shot, he can send me his audio as well as mine audio. We can all send it to the same recorder at the same time. So I can see Landon's MacBook. I can see Scott's MacBook. Because Scott and Landon both have Dante Virtual Sound Card. And Dante Virtual Sound Card is another application offered by Audinate that turns the Ethernet port on your computer into a Dante port. It's software-based. It's a direct download from Audinate. I think they're still running a special, $29. It's a deal. So with a Dante-enabled computer, it acts just like a Dante port. And Dante Virtual Sound Card is compatible with just about any app you can think of, from iTunes up to Pro Tools. It just becomes, on Apple, it's compatible with all core audio. On Windows systems, it's ACO compliant. So any application you've got, you know, Nuendo, whatever, you can use Dante now as your interconnect. So I can see Scott's computer, his Pix 260, and his Yamaha. I can see every input and every output of all of those devices, and with just a single cable that I ran over to him. I can also see the Shure SCM820 in the back of the room. I can see everything on my card. I can see everything's just plugged into the switch. So when you launch Dante Controller, it comes up with the basic routing view, and it's a cross-point routing. So as I go and expand these, on the top, I see transmitters. Everything on this top axis is a transmit channel. And the Pix 260 that's named, dang me, Pix 260 would be Mr. Harbor over there. So I can see that he's also named his channels: Mix, Boom A, Boom B, Ryan, Wilfred, Henry, Cop, Kristen. You just finished Wilfred, though, didn't you? Fantastic show. I can just open up. So this is Landon's MacBook Air. I can see 16 channels from there. This is Scott's MacBook Pro. Actually, it's probably easier to do it on a mouse. So I can just keep opening up these as I want, or collapse them. And then down on this axis, you have receive channels. So here's his O1V. This is my O1V. Actually, it's the name of the card. So if I wanted to route, say, from my O1V, which is this one, to Scott's O1V, which is this one, I just bring this down and I can just click. Green means good, and we're done. So I can route a transmit channel to any receive channel, and I can do it to multiple things. So I can send things simultaneously to him, to the back of the room, to something on my cart, and vice versa. So routing is just kind of up to your own imagination. There are also things called multicast flows. You can set up a multicast flow in Dante Controller, and it would be used if you're going to send one signal to multiple devices simultaneously. You might want to set up what's called a multicast flow. I think Audinate recommends that if you're going to send more than 3 things at the same time, you create a multicast flow. And multicast is basically just it's a better way to use the bandwidth that you have available. And depending on the speed of your network, if you're running all gigabit, if you're running tactical fiber, that's a consideration. I'm not running any multicast flows right now. I'll show that in a second. So routing view is the first one that comes up. So as you can see, if I open up everything, I've got a lot of things here. So I think I counted it before the show. I have 164 channels by 164 channels. Actually, no, it was 164 and 160 because the Shure ULX D4Q wireless receiver only has outputs. It doesn't have inputs. So I can route my wireless into my board. I can send him the same signal. It can go to the back of there. It's routing is really just sort of as inventive as you want to make it. So, but if I've got quite a bit of stuff here. Normally you might not see so much, but I have the Focusrite RedNet 2 in the rack. The RedNet 2 is a 16-channel line input. So with that, I've already pre-routed that into the Yamaha on the second layer of the Yamaha. So that's 16 more line ins to the Yamaha. So on layer 2, it just comes straight off that. Layer 1 is the built-in pre's on it. But if I have a whole bunch of stuff here, and I'm like, you know, I just want to find picks, I can filter my inputs, or my transmitters, or my receivers. Let's try MY. So you just type in the name, so it kind of clears away, because that cross-point routing can get really huge with a lot of stuff hooked up to it, but we're trying to keep it a little simple. And if I want to get back to it, I just delete those. And delete those. So it's going to open up in the routing tab. But up here, you're going to see a couple of more tabs, and let's talk about those for a second. The device status. Okay, the device status tab tells you information about everything on the network the controller can see. It gives you the name, the product type. In many instances, it will tell you the firmware version it's running. And that is the Dante firmware, not necessarily the internal firmware that it's running. It'll tell you its primary IP address and its link speed. So I'm seeing that this MacBook Air is at 100 megabytes per second, but everything else is at 1 gig. It'll tell me if it has a secondary address. If I'm running the redundancy, it's going to set 2 separate IP addresses, but I'm not running that down right now. If I want to edit some information about this, so let's see. This is my picks. I double click on it. This brings up the information tab about this specific device. So right now, I know that I have channels routed to it from the MY. So I'm looking at my PIX 260, and I see a couple channels routed here in the receive. I can look at my transmit channels. And here, I can change names if I want to. So I can change the name of that. I'm going to try that mix. Okay. So then if I go back to my routing tab and I look up, oops, my PIX 260. I think I did it to the, there we go. You see it's named the track mix. So I can assign simple names to it. They can be whatever you want. So if I wanted to name all of the outputs on the Yamaha card, I can name it, you know, by the actor's name on that track or the bus or whatever assignment I want to do. It's entirely up to you. And that name is now available to all devices on the network. The PIX will see it and it will change its name. I can also click the status tab. The status tab will tell me information about this particular one, who manufactured it, what kind of Dante interface it has, what its clock synchronization is, and what its IP address and speed is. Go to the device configuration tab and I can rename it. So let's rename this as LSC PIX 260. Okay. So now I've renamed it. So that shows up that way. So now any other device is going to see that name as well. else can I do this? Oh, here we are. I can name my transmit channels, the receive channel. There's this little signal. If I route audio, if I have a bunch of stuff going in a Dante network and I'm not sure if I should be getting audio, but I'm not hearing it on the other end, these little things will light up green when it's getting signal. So you can use that to identify signal routing as well. The last one would be my network configuration. So this is where I can change it to from a switched to a redundant network. For my application, I'm leaving everything in the switched. I'm not running redundant. I can set whether it's going to attain its IP address by default, or I can manually configure an IP address, or I can reboot it or reset it to factory defaults. I can also create multicast flows. So if I'm going to send a particular channel to a whole bunch of devices simultaneously, I can just create a new flow by clicking here. But for sitting on a cart with just a lot less gear than I have plugged in right now, you don't really need to do multicast flows. The next tab is clock status. And in a Dante network, something has to be the master clock. When Dante controller launches, it takes a sample of information from every device on the network and it determines which one has the best clock. And it automatically makes that the clock master for the whole network. In this case, if you look up here, it's picked Scott's PIX 260 as the master clock. But if I want, I can, well, that's probably because Scott has set his up to be a preferred master on a network. You know what? I don't like Scott, so I'm going to turn that off. So I'm going to make something else. I'm going to make mine preferred master. So if you designate something a preferred master, that will always act as the master clock. And you should really pick something that's probably going to be turned on and available all the time. But in the event that that device goes down, Dante controller picks another clock instantaneously. It automatically switches over. Courtney has a question. Which one handles DHCP? Landon? No.
Which is something that Microsoft came up with. Basically, computers or devices that are on a network without a DHCP server will auto-configure their IP addresses. And that's, if you click on the device status tab here, you'll end up with IP addresses that are in the form 169.254. And that is something that's called locally assigned addressing. If you have a DHCP server, it'll pick up DHCP addresses. If you don't, it'll do this. It's self-assigned. Or you can switch them to static if you want to control your destiny as far as the IP addresses go. But all of the Dante devices will do self-assigned or DHCP. Yes, they do. So they follow the same protocols.
Okay. As Landon said in his previous demonstration, Dante handles multiple sample rates on the same network. For those of you lucky enough to shoot film, you can still run 48048 on a PIX 260. The network still runs at 48K. Even if the PIX 260 is set as the clock master, it's not going to pull up your Yamaha. Your PIX 260 will be running at 48048 and recording at 48048, but the Yamaha is still going to be at 48K. So you don't have to, you know how we used to have to run a word clock into the O1V to get it to pull up to 48048. You don't have to do that because the Dante network clock is different than the word clock. And So the Yamaha just runs on its own 48K and it's happy. So in the Yamaha clock tab, you can have it run on its own. You can have it be its own clock master. You can have it clock to the Dante network. It doesn't really matter so much to the Yamaha because it's going to stay at the same rate regardless. The last tab is the events tab. It's just sort of, it's a running tally of events that have happened in the system. So it notices, it's made this device a grandmaster. I'm not sure which one. And it's noticed that I changed the LSC PIX 260 now to the grandmaster clock. You can clear this or keep the log as long as you want. I'm going to clear this. Another feature, this earlier as we were setting up, we're running two Shure SCM 820s in this rig. One's up here and one's back there. And we wanted to run audio from Landon's computer out of his Dante virtual sound card into my switch and back down to there. But when I launched controller, I see two Shure SCM 820s. I'm like, well, which one is which? So there's a feature in controller called Identify Device. And what it'll do, if I have a whole bunch of stuff in a rack and I'm not sure which one I'm looking for, I hit this button. And it'll make all the LEDs on that device light up somewhere in a rack. So that should be flashing back there, is it? Yes, see? I picked right. And it'll just flash for a little bit, then it'll stop. A lot of devices have that built into it, so you can identify, if you have a whole bunch of similar things on a network, it's a kind of low-tech way to figure out which one you're actually trying to address, especially if it's in a remote location. So that's kind of Dante Controller. You don't really have to do much. You launch it, it discovers everything on the network, instantly goes into routing view, and you're ready to go. There's not too much configuring you need to do other than picking your routing. You can save setups. So if you have a whole big routing setup with a network, you can save it and bring it back later. The only thing you have to be aware of is that if you change the name of a device, the routing you did in your previous setup assumes that the name is the same. So if you change the name, it's not automatically going to put that routing back with that device because you've changed the name. So you just have to go back in and click it again.
Will two instances play nice with each other? If there's two instances of Dante Controller on the network, will they play nice with each other?
You can have multiple computers running Dante Controller on the same network. It won't cause any particular conflicts other than you have two people with control over the same system simultaneously. Like I have Dante Controller, Scott can have Dante Controller, and we can just fight each other over who gets to route what. There's no lockout function per se. I wish there was. Courtney again. You cannot run Dante over a Wi-Fi network. That's frowned upon. It has to be hardline. About the only thing you can do, if I put in a wireless access point on this, I'm not even sure if Dante will work. Will it, Landon?
Dante will not currently work over Wi-Fi, but we're actually making a change so that you can use Dante Controller over a Wi-Fi. However, the actual audio transport has to be on a wired connection.
Yeah.
Mike, a quick question.
Oh,
If, say you're doing a show, you end up on a venue that is Dante-enabled, and you want to pull their mix track for their concert or whatever into your system, it seems easy enough to grab it, find out what they're calling their front-of-house output. What's to stop you from screwing up their routing or them screwing up your routing if they've got their controller open and you've got your controller open?
The only thing that can stop you is not having Dante Controller on your computer. because you don't need it. If they're running a Dante system, they're probably running controller. You might have to go to them and say, hey, can you send me these 2 channels? Here's.
But if you're running controller, you can find it yourself.
If you're running controller, you can find it yourself. Like I said, there's no lockout function. I don't know if Audinate is considering that, but yeah, I mean, it's down to your own sense of mischief, I guess. Yeah, I believe we have a question from the interweb.
From the interweb.
From the interweb.
Hey, we have a question here. It's from Ryan Peterson, 507. Does the secondary network run on a separate network, or is it all on the same network?
If you're running the redundant network, it has to be completely separate. You cannot cross the streams. It's just like Ghostbusters, you know. So if I'm running redundant networks, I need to run redundant gigabit switches. I just need to make sure that the primary ports are plugged into the primary ports, the switches. The secondary ones are in the secondary. You can't have them on the same network. It kind of defeats the whole purpose. Okay?
Hi, Mike.
Oh.
Stage right. Never mind.
Okay, I can't see.
Stage left. Thanks, I've been corrected. Why don't they build a password lockout, so it's, you know, you can make sure that no one can mess with your routing and naming, etc.
I don't know if there's a technological impediment to doing that. Landon, you want to comment on that, or?
It is something that we are going to have as a future feature. Because most of our market is installed, where IT departments can implement normal, you know, IP and switch-based security. That isn't an issue. And in general, the live sound and studio are completely isolated networks, so you don't have the fear that somebody's going to plug in a system and mess with your routing. But this isn't the first time we've heard those requests, and it's definitely something that we're looking at for future release of Dante controller. Along with the ability to use a wireless interface in order to control a network.
Okay. One of the other things I can do, as long as everything is networked. And by the way, once you do all your routing in Dante controller, you can close it. It doesn't have to be running to run the system. Once you set a routing or a name or edit any information, that data is embedded in the device that you routed it to. So all the routing remains the same. So once I've done my routing, I can turn it off. I can take the computer off. It doesn't even have to be plugged in. All the routing stays the same. Controller only lets you go back in and change the routing, but it doesn't have to be running it, you know, once you've set it up. It's pretty self-contained. But while I have everything on a network, one of the other trends I've started to see is manufacturers building in web browsers into their products. I'm going to show you a couple of them, and this is all running over the same network, the same Dante network. Like I said, it controls audio and control information. So we're going to start with Shure. Shure has an application. So all of these Shure products I have here are Dante-enabled. Shure has a web device discovery application that comes bundled with it. So if I have anything on a network, I launch this. It'll see everything on the network. I can do the Dante identify thing here if I want to. Or I can pick one, and I say open. And it's going to launch Chrome. And it takes a second here. It's going to refresh it. So now I have direct web access to that mixer. I can control all of the features in Chrome. Pretty much any web browser, I think, works with it. And while I'm doing this, I'm going to open up another tab. And I'm going to look at the sound devices. PIX 260. And I'm going to type in its IP address, 169.254.2.156. Oh, guest. And now I see not only my picks, but I see Scott's as well. So I can make him record and stop. No, I can't? Why not? Oh, that's because he's got a password. So he locks me out. 401, unauthorized. So now I'm running PixNet. So basically with tabbed browsing, I have all my devices here, at least the ones that have it built in. So if I address my Pix, it's mine so I can get into it. This brings up the basic PixNet screen. And if I have multiple Pixes like we do now, I can assign them to groups. So if I hit record on mine, everything rolls simultaneously. And those are sync accurate, yes. Even though there could be any place on the network. So from PixNet, I have access to all of the menus that the Pix does natively. File storage, video settings, clips. Look at my audio tab. So I can pick my sample rate, my bit rates. And then I click my tracks tab, and it's going to build the list. So I have all my available tracks right here. I can arm them, disarm them. I want to change that name. Let's call that boom 1. And when I change that here, it changes the name on the Pix screen, it changes the name in the Dante network, and changes the name of the metadata that's being embedded in the BEX chunk and the XML chunks of the resulting broadcast wave file. So it's a single point entry for all those devices. Another question? Oop.
We have a question from Spicer ZZ. Can you use a virtual sound card to send a signal from your computer sound card to another computer?
Assuming both of them have virtual sound card, sure.
Okay.
16 in, 16 out. Although I think virtual sound card supports more.
64 by 64.
It's 64 by 64 with virtual sound card.
Okay.
Yes, you need to have at least one piece of Dante hardware in the network. You can, as long as there's another piece of Dante hardware on the network. That piece of Dante hardware doesn't have to be involved in the audio stream at all, so you can go direct from computer to computer. The requirement is for clock synchronization between the devices, and because Dante Virtual Sound Card is a software product, it doesn't have the accurate clocks that are required for that synchronization. So you must have at least one piece of Dante hardware acting as clock master on the network.
So I stand corrected. No.
One more question for you. What gear out there supports remote preamp control?
A large amount of the Yamahas, unless you're talking about the preamps themselves. The Focusrite items that we hear, the RedNet series, are remote controlled mic pre's that operate over Dante. I don't have a full list of all the manufacturers who make that stuff. I know Lectrosonics, who make the Dante BOB88 breakout box. And Scott was telling me yesterday, Scott Woolley from Lectrosonics is here, that last week at Infocom they came out with a 16-channel version and one that has mic pre's built into it as well, all on Dante. I believe there's a full list of all Dante-enabled products on Audinate's website. You can find out all the implementers, and you should be able to find out from their websites, who implemented it and who didn't. So back to PixNet. Hold on, virus security. Get out of here. I also can control my output matrix. So I can send those tracks coming in to the Pix on the Dante network. But then I can turn around and I can spit them back out on the line outputs, on the AES, on the HDMI embedded stream, on the SDI stream. And that's all just done here. So web-enabled products, you know, I've only got a couple of them here to show here, but that seems to be kind of a trend. Some manufacturers have their own graphic user interfaces. Focusrite has RedNet Control, which is their own software-based application to do much of the same kind of stuff with the RedNet devices. I don't know if Matt's going to show that. Matt Pliskin from Focusrite is here. He'll show that if you get a chance. Go look at that. So I think that's all I have for that. I wanted to show a few other things, some of the other devices I just wanted to go over before I finish up here, because they're going to start lunch in a little bit. I don't like Windows 8. Just saying. Come here. Okay. Let me find out where I was. If this was a Mac, it'd be easier. Also in my rack, I have Shure SCM820s auto mixes. It's their latest Dante-enabled product, featuring their IntelliMix. It comes in a couple of versions. The one that's in my rack, the outputs are on Phoenix connectors. The one that's in their rack has DB25s and XLRs. They're both Dante connected. From Focusrite, the RedNet line, they have multiple devices. Starting with the RedNet 1 is an 8-channel line-in, line-out interface that interfaces with Dante. The RedNet 2, which is what I'm running here, is 16 channels of line input and 16 channels of line output. The RedNet 3 is 32-channel digital I/O, and that's AES, EBU, SPDIF, or ADAT. The RedNet 4 is an 8-channel microphone preamplifier. The RedNet 5 is 32 channels of I/O to Pro Tools HDX. So it's a direct connection to Pro Tools HDX systems. So if you need to get out of Pro Tools, you can do it that way. They also make a RedNet PCIe card that's Mac or Windows compatible. That gives you a dedicated hardware port on your computer. So if you're running Dante Virtual Sound Card, you can use it as a Dante port, but your latency might be a little higher than if you're using a dedicated piece of hardware. So the Focusrite RedNet PCIe card will do that for you. It has all the Dante connectivity built into it. The RedNet 6 is a 64-channel MADI interface. And I know a lot of the larger reality shows are still running MADI. So you can run MADI into the RedNet 6, convert it into Dante, and all 64 of those channels will be available on the same Dante network. From Lectrosonics, this is the Bob 88, which is kind of a cool name for a product. Really kind of designed as an installed sound item. Dante I/O as well as line in and line out on Phoenix connectors. But hey, there's a 15-volt DC input over there. So you could use that as a breakout box to interface with analog equipment. I know they just announced a 16-channel version. I believe there's a 2-channel one out there somewhere coming. The next venue receiver is going to have a Dante port on it. So I know the venue is a very popular item. So as more and more gear has Dante-enabled ports, the possibilities for what you can do with it only expand. I know there's a tendency to, you know, when you start throwing out things like, hey, it does 560 channels. Like, oh my God, when am I ever going to want to do like 560 channels? But when you start adding in gear and see that the cross-point routing, I mean, just with what I've got here is 164 by 164. And you couldn't do that really with anything else without a whole bunch of cables. And I didn't even want to think what 100 feet of 16-channel multi-core pair analog snake cable is going to cost you, or even weigh, or if something goes wrong, you know, how are you going to fix that in the field? You know, for a few dollars, you know, and investment in a nice quality crimper, I can fix that in 10 minutes in the field, or I can buy 10 more as spares. You can't really do that with existing technology until now. Lectrosonics, of course, also makes the Aspen line of auto mixers. This is the SPN DNT Dante version to interface with all of their auto mixing. So I want to thank all of our manufacturers for being here today. A lot of them flew in from out of town. I really appreciate them coming down and supporting us for this. So I want to thank you for coming. I hope you got something out of it. If anybody has any questions, no? Just Courtney? That was it? You're not, nothing? Okay, well, thank you everybody for coming. I hope you got something out of it. I hope you can see what you can do. And we'll see you soon. Thanks.